Right, our next guest should be no stranger to you, our first guest even. I think he's a pretty exemplary investigative journalist, and he's done some extraordinary work on the disappearance of Eric Braverman, the former Clinton Foundation CEO, the shadowy past of the Clinton Foundation, money going missing, funds not reaching places where funds were meant to reach, child trafficking, Pizzagate, and much more, including the murder of Democratic staffer Seth Rich, who was shot to death last year. It's believed he leaked files to WikiLeaks, and that may have gotten him murdered. I'm delighted to welcome back to the programme our friend, and again, I want to say, and I don't say it lightly, terrific journalist, George Webb. George, welcome back. How are you?
Good, Richie. How are you?
Really well, George, really well. And I'm intrigued by what's been going on with you in recent days. Thanks for coming back on the programme. Naturally enough, as usual, on on Twitter and on Facebook, we'll put links out to George's videos. If you haven't seen him before, we'll show you where you can follow him on Twitter. George, it was February when you were last on the programme. You're on day 219 or 220 of this investigation that you were on. I think it might have been around about day 90 or thereabouts when we spoke. Your record is there for everybody to see on Twitter. It's taking you down some weird and wonderful and scary paths, I think. Let those listeners know who don't know what's been going on. There won't be many of them. What motivated you to follow and begin looking into these issues to begin with?
Well, I actually thought I had a lot in my life that was similar to Eric Braverman in terms of being kind of on the persona non grata list from a guy named Andrew McCabe, who runs our FBI now here in the United States. And when you get on the kind of bad guy list or the target list, it's no fun. And I saw a lot of stuff happening that I had gone through myself, and I looked at things that Braverman was going through, and so I kind of identified with Braverman. And I don't know if you remember, but John Podesta is trying to find the leak. You know, Hillary has an article come out in the New York Times that she has a private email on, I think on the 4th of March in the New York Times, and the 6th of March out comes the article about she has a private server. And then on the 8th of March, she hires our current FBI director with a $675,000 gift to his wife's campaign, who wasn't running 2 days before. And so a lot happens with bringing in the muscle and the intelligence muscle on Braverman. And they find out within a day that Eric Braverman's the leak. And I think what happened is McCabe ran a deep dive of everybody's conversations in the Clinton Foundation and found out it was Eric Braverman. And there's there's two very chilling emails in the Podesta emails which say, you know, Neera Tanden, which is kind of the underling of Podesta, says, "Who's the leak? Who's the leak?" And then John Podesta comes back, Eric Braverman. And then the other email that he writes is, "We have to make an example of somebody." And, you know, if you know John Podesta and working with the SEIU and, wet work that he talks about in his emails, that's not a good list to be on.
Yeah, you're not talking about, let's make an example of somebody, let's fire him and let's embarrass him. We're talking about something more sinister. And what about the whereabouts of Braverman, George?
Well, I reenacted Braverman's run this morning in Manhattan, and we actually went up to 91st Street, not too far from the 92nd Street Y, if people know where that is, on not far off Park Avenue, between Park Avenue and Fifth Avenue, actually between Madison Avenue and Fifth Avenue. And we went to the embassy, and I pretended I was Eric Braverman. So I said, I'd like to get it. For those who don't know the story of why he would run to the embassy, I better set that up. There's three WikiLeaks founders, including two guys over on your side of the pond, Gavin McFadden and John Jones, who are founders of WikiLeaks. And then the other founder or key guy is Mike Ratner. They all die within about 3 or 4 months of each other. Now they all seem to have very fast cancers. But John Jones gets pushed in front of a train, and I can't remember what town it was, maybe Litchfield, but somebody will correct me. But, Braverman, and there's two WikiLeaks guys that die as well, Seth Rich, obviously, and then there's also Sean. And all of a sudden, I'm not remembering Sean's name. Sean Lucas, yeah. So, and I said from the beginning of my series that it's going to be Braverman was the other Seth Rich. So Braverman and Seth Rich are the two people that give WikiLeaks information, and it sort of has to be that way because one WikiLeaks comes out with the DNC leaks come out at the end of May 25th. That's going to be the Seth Rich. But then there's another one that come with the Podesta leaks around October. That's going to be Eric Braverman. And I believe the actual handoff happened here in New York on September the 15th, the night of the bombing. If people remember the Chelsea bombing.
Yeah.
And I could put more behind that. But if you're the other guy that didn't get killed, you have a whole different state of mind after Seth Rich is killed than you do if you are somebody else that doesn't have that association.
That's why we got together. Yeah, that's why we got you on the program. The first time you came on was the Braverman story and the circumstances around his disappearance, you know, his intimate knowledge of the Clinton Foundation and all of that. There are so many strands to this, George. I'm not in the habit of kissing people's arses. I'm not. But this is great work that you've done. And I know, unlike many in the so-called independent media, you're not doing this to become part of the story or to be famous. You're doing this because it's vital that we know. Now, I know that you were hugely interested in Monica Peterson, for example. I mean, you know what, George, when I look at all of this, there is a film in this to be told one day on the style of Goodfellas or Casino. This is incredible. Monica Peterson was killed. Another woman who died, she knew about the Clinton Foundation and Haiti and what was going on there. We talked about this before. There's so many strands to this. You're doing a great job, by the way, in your work at not losing your viewers. You know, in a minefield of information. You're not. I mean, there's so much to this. Do you want to talk a little bit about Monica Peterson and where that went and where her story led you to and information beyond that?
Sure. Well, there's just, there's a lot of people that write about the Clinton body count, and people argue, is it 100, is it 150, is it 125? But they're not saying that it's 3 or 4, so we can have hot debates about what the total number of the body count, but they just keep piling up. And my fundamental thesis in the series is if you just keep the people who are having these meetings that end people's lives, if you just let that keep going, it doesn't get any better. It just gets worse. And you start throwing in the fact that, the Clintons, and I think we talked about this, Hillary first starts really doing organ harvesting in Kosovo in like 1999, and these 7 doctors in this yellow house. But then once you realize how valuable these organs are, then you start doing it in other places like Haiti. And then if you start saying, okay, well, anybody who looks like my enemy makes a natural organ donor, everybody who doesn't agree with your politics starts looking like an organ donor. So you end up bringing it to Chicago at Homan Square, and there's going to be, I'm working on other cities right now, Baltimore, Philadelphia, New York, Chicago, where you develop these rat lines, and it's this gradual creep of stuff from the most hideous wars and the most hideous practices, where in Kosovo it was Serbian prisoners, in Haiti it was Haitian prisoners, and it's getting closer to our shores. And now it's prisoners in Chicago. Now it's people walking around that are political opponents maybe, and journalists. So it really isn't. And the fact that Hillary didn't win doesn't change anything, because you still have these kind of spies in Congress, these Awan brothers, that still have access to some of our top secrets. So
now let me just stop you there. This is really important. The trafficking story and how they profited from the trafficking of organs out of war zones that they, their administration, their Clinton's administration, later administrations that he was connected to, of course, played a big part in provoking. This is extraordinary stuff. And again, I'm going to put links out. And in fact, I'm going to get Aaron, our webmaster, to put these links on our website to these videos that you've done. You mentioned these Pakistani brothers and their influence. Yeah. Tell us about these guys. Who are these guys? How are they connected to Hillary Clinton? What's their part in all of this?
Well, I have new information today that I'm going to break on the Richie Allen Show that I believe Imran Awan first comes to the United States to work for, this is a congressional source, so it's unconfirmed, but for a company called Inter-American, which does the constituent management database. So if you're a congressperson, which I did last week, I went all through Congress, and you go in and you say, hey, I'm concerned about global warming or whatever your issue is. They start typing on their keyboard and they put your issue into a database. Okay, so that's been around since 1999 through this program called Inter-American, and I believe we're going to show employment records for the Awans coming in that soon. So that's fine. I don't have any problem with Pakistanis doing that, but then they go on to become congressional staffers, and then they somehow miss those first couple of years where you make 50, 60, or most of the congressional staffers I talked to, and we must have talked to 40 or 50 last week, are making in 30 to 40 range. And when they heard that the Awan brothers were making $160,000 a year, their eyes came out of their sockets. There's a lot of them that are interns and aren't making any money. Well, it doesn't just stop there, because it looks like from Hillary Clinton's emails that they're also doing secure phones for Congress. They're also configuring laptops for Congress. Now, by themselves, not such a dangerous combination, but when you combine the laptop with a BlackBerry, it can be pre-configured in such a way that you can give a member of Congress the laptop, which they call a thin client. They don't even know it's pre-configured. So now I get all of the congressman's traffic back and forth, desktop synced exactly in the same way as Huma's came to Anthony Weiner's laptop. Now, you remember Anthony Weiner is also in the Congress in 1999 to 2011, and I'm trying to track directly the H-1B visa program, and I think it's going to be through a company called Development Agency, Inc., and I went there last week in Chevy Chase, Maryland. I believe it's going to be Anthony Weiner and Development Agency, Inc. that brings the Awans initially into the United States in 1999.
This is huge, because these BlackBerry phones that Hillary and her clique used within the party. In fact, she insisted on having them. They were not recommended by or approved by the National Security Agency, yet she wanted them anyway, right?
That's correct. General Dynamics made a $5,000 bulletproof phone that was unhackable, basically. And she said, no, I don't want to use that. I want to use this phones from, and she calls it in the emails, Anthony's trusted staff. Now, Anthony Weiner hasn't come forward and said who his trusted staff is. And most people think Anthony Weiner, the sexting, the texting, and everything. But beneath all that is a very shrewd operator who has a very good handle on technology, believe it or not. He's been made to be a klutz by an ad firm here named MWW, Monster Worldwide, but where he worked briefly. And I think he synced his phone, his BlackBerry, to their servers as well. But he's not the klutz everyone thinks he is. And you have emails. You can just Google WikiLeaks, Anthony's trusted staff, and I know that conjures a bad image, but
yeah, it does, yeah.
He is he's sending BlackBerries from Washington D.C. out to members and different folks on Wall Street.
George Webb is on the line, folks. This is he's doing groundbreaking work. He's uncovered, and I know he has help, and George is modest, but his work has uncovered a conspiracy that people who've read David Icke and others over the years won't be surprised such a conspiracy exists. But the vast majority of Americans and British men and women would be absolutely horrified to understand what George and his work has begun to uncover. A scandal involving the most powerful families in the United States of America, involving organ trafficking, child trafficking, paedophilia, the murder of anybody around them that comes by this information or that threatens the exposure of this information. A network of people working around them. That's why I made the analogy with The Godfather, Casino, Goodfellas earlier on. I'm going to make... I read a book some years ago by Robert Harris called The Ghostwriter. You might have read it, George. It's an amazing book. It's about a retired United Kingdom Prime Minister. And he's retired, but he's controversial. And a ghost writer is writing his memoirs. And the ghost writer discovers, played by Ewan McGregor in a subsequent film, the ghost writer discovers that the British Prime Minister was actually run by the CIA even from the time he was in college at university. What you're uncovering, mate, I believe would make the likes of Carl Bernstein, Cronkite, Woodward, people like that, proud. But no network in the world will ever touch this, because what you're uncovering, I think ultimately where this leads is that the Clintons and those who work for them, they are controlled and they are owned and run by a hidden force, a hidden hand. And that's where this work is leading you. It's fair to say that, right? No doubt about it.
Yes, and what I try to concentrate on is the data and the metadata.
And the facts.
Official documents, and really getting down to, I remember when Frank DeCamp was breaking the Franklin scandal, and I was working with, well, I won't say who, with Washington Times, but he would say, show me the receipts, because that was whether you had a story or not, show me the receipts. And in this scandal with the Awan brothers, and if you go into Congress, they've got two BlackBerry. They got an AT&T store and a Verizon store, but still today, I was there last week, the most prominently featured phones, the first three phones you can get are BlackBerries. So this isn't something that and who uses a BlackBerry still? The Senate didn't drop BlackBerries until 6 months ago, and they're still using BlackBerries in the House. And you could go down to one of those stores, pick those up, and unwittingly have all your emails. So we have no idea. The Inter-American company that Imran Awan worked for had 150 members that it worked for and provided services for. We don't have any idea how many hundreds of members of Congress over the last 14 years, 16 or 18 years, have been hacked this way. This is the same exact way Hillary Clinton used to go out on the 7th floor of the State Department to sync to her, to Huma Abedin's laptop. Huma Abedin, okay, I know, I'll go on speakerphone in a second, but I just want a good quality for the Richie Allen Show. I'm periscoping at the same time, Richie, sorry.
No worries, George, carry on, no worries, go ahead.
Yeah, but it's going to all come back to this voter database, and I've met with Dr. Jerome Corsi of InfoWars over this weekend. We did a big shoot yesterday. I did it with a Hollywood producer named Jason Goodman, our director, and it's going to be this constituency software. This is what Seth Rich was killed for. This is the system that he worked on. So the system is this NGP it's actually Nathan Perlman that wrote the software. Nathan G. Perlman is the old system, and then they merged with another company named VAN, V-A-N. But this is the system that Seth Rich worked on. And the way the system worked, and this constituent system that the Awans worked, fed right into that. It was I believe, the same system that the Awans are working on. So I've connected the Awans now in Congress, these folks that have stolen 20 laptops. When this was exposed, they stole the laptops and they stole the BlackBerries, and I identified where they were keeping them in a Virginia home, in one of the 12 homes that Imran Awan owned. So this isn't something about, a conspiracy theory. I talked to a Marine who was living in the home, and he said they had government markings on them. Imran said that they were not his, and he called the FBI. The FBI came over and confiscated the BlackBerries and the laptops. So this isn't speculation. I went to that house, knocked on that door, talked to that Marine. So if you watch Debbie Wasserman Schultz, she has a clip where she's threatening the Capitol Police. The Capitol Police have a chunk in the middle of D.C. that their jurisdiction. So they were the ones who went over to the Longwood office building and confiscated these. I think they went to a couple of other ones as well. But she's threatening, Debbie Wasserman Schultz is threatening him 3 times to cut his budget. And then when he finally finishes his answer and says he's not going to immediately turn over the BlackBerries and the laptops, she threatens him with consequences. So this is available. Anybody can go on the web and see
You're absolutely right. It's there. We've got video of this. This woman, of course, is a former DNC chairwoman. Again, another Clinton cabal woman. Do you think, George, that the thousands and thousands of hours of coverage given to Jared Kushner, the millions of sheets of newspaper given over to this garbage about Russia fixing the election, that this is to distract the American people from this knowledge, from this information? It must be.
It has to be, and because it's almost exactly, you just take the name Kushner out and put a Wan Brothers in, and you basically have the truth.
It's a bigger story.
Yeah, it's a bigger story. What the constituent database from Inter-American became part of NGP Van. Now, NGP Van is donors and it's volunteers. Okay, it's mega donors and super volunteers. Okay, so it's really the gold of getting elected. Okay, and you don't. What the Republicans do is you have your own system and the other guy has his own system. The Democrats don't work like that. They say you rent the NGP Van software. So you use it to find out who voted union before, and then you go knock on their house with these volunteers. When you're done and you lose, all that goes back to the monopoly, NGP Van, which I'm going to just say Perlman from now on. And if you cross them in any way, you get thrown out and you get cut off from that data. If you're cut off from the donor data as a Democrat and you're cut off from the volunteer data, you're almost no way you can win. So this is why Seth Rich is so mad, because he does all this voter expansion to get data into the NGP Van, and then they're accused once in December of looking at Hillary data when it was actually the other way around. And then the big blow up happens when the chair hurt around the world that gets thrown in Las Vegas, that Anthony Weiner's PR firm makes such a big deal about. And that, I think that's the last straw on the 25th or 26th of May. And that's when Seth Rich gives his thumb drive to WikiLeaks.
He gives his thumb drive to WikiLeaks, which has terrible consequences for him. What happened to him, George? I understand that you've named somebody. Now, some of those who have followed you for the last 6, 7, 8, 9 months will be absolutely shocked that you've named somebody. They will say, that's an incredible thing. How could George be absolutely sure, with it, beyond any doubt whatsoever, that he knows who killed Rich and what organisation that person was working for? How did you get to that conclusion, George?
Well, I wasn't the one who said Jolla, Jollah, was the one who killed Seth Rich. That was a 4chan had that, Anon had that for a long time. I was the one who connected the car ring. He had a car theft ring here in New York and a car theft ring in New Jersey. And the Iwans were car dealers, had all these string of car dealerships in Richmond and Falls Church, Virginia. I think there's going to be a couple of others that we haven't identified yet, but Easy Car Buying his wife had one called Easy Car Buying in Annandale. I think there's going to be 4 or 5. But anyway, the idea was you drive there was 23 or 24 guys in the ring, you'd steal the car here, and these are high-end luxury cars, so you have BMW or Mercedes or, Lexus. So those are fairly sophisticated alarm systems, and they would drive them down to these car lots in Washington. They would sell them for whatever, basically $5,000 to pay the person for stealing it. And then the person buying it would then give a donation to the Falls Church mosque. So they were laundering the money through the mosque, and they were doing the same thing in Richmond. I think there's going to be a couple more that I'm going to identify, one in Chantilly and one in Woodbridge, maybe another one in Annandale. But that's how they laundered the money. They also use that money to provide safe houses for different operatives coming into the country. I also identified how the visas were given to these known ISI folks. I named an Pakistani ISI operative today that was given a visa through the New York Film Academy. And you would think, New York Film Academy, that's in New York. But there's actually New York Film Academy and all over the world, but especially Dubai and in UAE. And I believe that was through those connections. I named a person this morning, a very violent person, and I had the actual person who was beaten up by this ISI operative. She can't come into the United States from Canada, but he not only got a visa, but he has a U.S. passport now. This is after being on the worldwide, this is the Interpol watch list. And I've confirmed that through the British Embassy in Kuala Lumpur. So I think pretty much I've painted in all the numbers here.
Yeah.
On the ISI. I've also done work in with the rat lines and the drugs and so forth in Pakistan as well. So I can talk about that as well if you want.
Well, we have, Joe. We've got about just under 10 minutes left. You can talk about whatever you want. What we have here is undoubtedly there is enough for any special prosecutor to convene a grand jury and to ask a grand jury to indict Hillary Clinton on a number of charges: murder, conspiracy to commit murder, fraud, money laundering, coercion, kidnapping, paedophilia, organ trafficking. I mentioned already perversion of justice, conspiracy to commit election fraud. All of this information, what you've done is carefully put together this story and spread it out there with all the supporting cast, you know, all the people involved in it. Have you have you shared what you have with agents of the FBI or other law enforcement agencies? Have you done that? Yeah, go on.
Yes, I've called the FBI many times, and I've done 712 videos for Andrew McCabe as well. And I call out Andrew McCabe in every video to publish not all the contents of Hillary and Huma's 650,000 emails, but just the metadata. Because the metadata, for instance, David Petraeus is speaking here tonight in New York at the 92nd Street Y. He's going to be talking about, a new global world of oil exploration or whatever he's going to be talking about. I doubt he's going to be talking about the 1,000 emails between him and Hillary Clinton's private email, and the 1,000 emails that answer to the search term Benghazi. So this is what people need to realize, is that you have people outside of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, outside of the chain of command and the different commands of the U.S. Armed Forces, deciding what countries get toppled, deciding that Libya gets toppled, deciding that Syria is going to get toppled, et cetera. So that's the questions I would have for David Petraeus tonight. And it's going to be the same question over and over again. If the metadata is published, you're going to see all the connections of the spider web, of the octopus, if you will. And that's what I'm pushing for. That's what I pushed for since day one.
Why don't WikiLeaks then? Sorry, George. Sorry to interrupt you. Why don't WikiLeaks take everything you've done and publish that, give it a massive push, a huge push, and say, there you go? Why won't WikiLeaks do that?
Well, I talked to Tim Day here, and I believe he lives in Lafayette, Indiana, and he's kind of the WikiLeaks person that controls the Twitter account. And I think we got off at cross purposes because I think everyone maybe who's familiar with me knows I've also been a part of the WikiLeaks network, the thumb drive network. This is more like the sneaker net.
Yeah.
And this is the backup network if the Dropbox, the electronic Dropbox.
Which you kind of kept secret, let's be honest. But that's no big deal. But you didn't keep that secret.
I did, but I came clean on it. You did.
I wasn't going to bring it up, George, but I'm a bastard, so I had to say it. But
no, that's fine. I don't have any problem.
Fair enough.
Yeah, I didn't commit espionage.
No, you didn't.
I was just,
no.
Yeah. But anyway, I was involved in the network here in New York, and I did some drops for WikiLeaks. And before that, for Der Spiegel. I'm not saying I didn't. But what my point is, Kim.com came forward, and I think we had Kim.com on a Periscope last night. And I just said to Kim, he published in the Seth Rich case, he published the FBI document of getting the phone of Seth Rich, and he published the FBI document of getting the laptop, heavily redacted. But everyone asked the same question. If this is just a simple robbery of Seth Rich, why did the FBI break into the house and go get the laptop? And we've talked to the lead investigator for the family, Rod Wheeler, and he's also mentioned to us in private conversation, but I'll go ahead and spill it on the Richie Allen Show, that there's an FBI bullet involved. Now, the cover story for the FBI bullet, now this bullet may have special markings on it or special qualities that would be only
identified.
To the
Right,
FBI.
okay, yeah.
Yep, the FBI. So anyway, I'll leave that for the next show.
Listen, yeah, and of course, one of the things I was going to suggest that we do is that we don't wait too long, and in a week or 10 days, if you can commit to the time, let's do an hour and 45 minutes. We'll promote it. We'll give it massive coverage on davidicke.com, and you will lay this out from the very beginning like you're telling a story. Let's do that, if you're up for that, because this is massive. Can I just say this, George?
You supported me early. Richie, so I owe you big time, and I'll clear the decks for you.
Well, listen, mate, we did, because that's the reason David Icke came to me 3 years ago and said, if you do this radio program, I'll stream it. The idea was to get away from personality presenters, bullshitters who know everything but they know nothing, and make a platform for people who are actually doing research to get it out there. You were perfect for the program. This is massive stuff. Can I just say one thing, and I'm going to give you the final word on it?
Sure.
And you might not like me for saying this. It's not in any way a criticism of you, but it's where I think this ultimately goes. This is where I think this goes. You see, for me now, this is just my opinion, behind Hillary Clinton are the royal families of Europe and the banking families. And behind them is something sinister that maybe even doesn't have a name. And that's where all this paedophilia and satanic stuff and murder, mass murder of children in satanic rituals ultimately goes. Because whether people want to believe in a dark entity or not, and it might or might not exist, these people believe in it. And this aspect of their business is paying homage or worshipping that. Now, that might piss you off, George, because you're a journalist and you're dealing in hard facts and what you can prove. But I can't not say that's my opinion. That's our opinion. Where that side of it goes is to a place that most people don't even want to think about. I really do believe that. Don't know what you think.
Well, the research I've done is that I call them the Rothies versus the Rockies. I mean, the Rockefeller kind of cabal and the Rothschild. And there was an international oil tussle between your continent and mine, between the Rockefellers and the Rothschilds. We're actually going to be going on June 1st to Chantilly, Virginia, to hope to meet up with Luke for Change, or We Are Change.
Yeah.
He's going to be covering the Bilderberg meetings, and that's really where the Rockies and the Rothies kind of sit down and kind of try to come
lay
to
out
terms.
the agenda. Lay out the agenda for the next 12 months. Yeah.
So that's a teaser for 10 days from now.
Listen, mate, it's fantastic work, George. As usual, I'll direct our listeners to the videos and to follow you on Twitter. It's one of the biggest stories in the world, and you might just be onto that one story that brings maybe millions of people to an awareness that things are not the way they seem, George. And if you do that, mate, it'll be an amazing achievement. Thanks for coming on the program again. Godspeed to you, and listen, look after yourself. Look after yourself.
Oh, thank you. Always an honor, Richie.
Cheers, George. Bye for now. George Webb on the line to us there. The look after himself is deadly, deadly serious, because anybody who's tried to expose this from within the Democratic National Committee, from within the party, has been murdered or has disappeared in the case of Eric Braverman.